If memory serves me correct, it's 4 years since Dr. Pink has described how chicken embryos were helping fight prostate cancer, and that particular presentation is still being discussed. For those of you who have not seen one of his presentations, you won't be disappointed. Dr. Pink is our lead researcher in the development and validation of the Nanostics diagnostic platform, and has considerable expertise in scientific team management, as well as biochemistry, protein synthesis, and experimental therapeutics. And joining Dr. Pink tonight, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Argo Basu, in pursuit of his passion of making a direct impact on patients' lives through his groundbreaking research. Dr. Basu moved to the diagnostics industry in 2014. He's always had a long-term ambition in pursuing cancer research, and in particular, interest in prostate cancer. In 2021, Dr. Basu joined Nanostics as a senior scientist focusing on cancer research, particularly prostate cancer. Since joining Nanostics, Dr. Basu has been deeply involved in the clinical laboratory operations and has played a crucial role in finalizing the implementation of ClarityDX Prostate test, and we'll hear about that tonight. Dr. Basu has been instrumental in validating the test's efficacy and ensuring that it meets the necessary accreditation requirements, ultimately making it available to all patients. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Desmond Pink and Dr. Argo Basu.
So I came here, in 2019, and I spoke about the academic endeavors that led us towards the hope of actually building a diagnostic for prostate cancer. So I think when I finished our talk in December 2019, we kind of finished off with, we have this idea, we have some preliminary evidence that we want to maybe try to get to the clinic. So since 2019, we've actually been very successful. So I've spoken to a number of groups, and Argo earlier in the summer voiced an interest in actually speaking to different survivor groups. I'm going to pass the torch tonight. And Argo, who's actually been instrumental in providing a lot of the raw data in the clinical validation of our test. So it's only fitting that he actually get to speak. This is probably this is the first survivor group where we've actually discussed the findings of our test that we just finished in March or April, I think. And the paper, the full scientific paper will be submitted actually probably in the next 30 minutes to the European Journal of Urology. That's the first journal we're going to go for. So like I say, it's only fitting that Argo gets to actually discuss that with you fine people tonight. So I'll pass it over to Argo.
Thank you, Desmond, for a great introduction. Good evening, everybody. I feel honored and excited to be here today. I should probably go to the next slide. This slide was made by Desmond to introduce me, but I think you already know by who is this guy. This is a picture of the city where I grew up in India, Kolkata. I was traveling to Kolkata only 2 days back. I'm back to Edmonton, and my body is still saying that I should say good morning to you, but it is really good evening. Anyway, moving on, what we are going to discuss today, I'll try to keep it more relaxed and informal. I'll try to start from the beginning, where we started our journey as Lewis Group, when Lewis Group moved to Edmonton and started their research. And from there, within the so Lewis Group moved to Edmonton in 2012 and 2023. So in 11 years, we have achieved a lot. We feel that we have achieved a lot, and well, I'll break the news right now. We'll bring out a novel prostate cancer diagnostic test in a matter of a couple of months in Alberta. So I'll try to go through that journey. So I don't have to explain too much to this group about screening of prostate cancer and how the diagnostic works. So typically, a PSA blood test is performed, and if the PSA level is more than 3 nanogram per milliliter, the physician will perform a digital rectal exam. If the physician feels that the patient may have prostate cancer, they would recommend the patient to go for a prostate biopsy. And prostate biopsy, as you can imagine, is not a comfortable process. When a probe goes inside your body and 12 needles poking through a gland that's size of a walnut, it can be painful, and it can have other risk factors, including life-threatening infections. Actually, I mean, I'll share this. My PhD supervisor recently had to have a prostate biopsy, and he actually had an infection. I mean, he's okay now, but it was not a good news. Let me rewind a little bit here. Let's go back to 2002. John Sojonki, who was a prostate cancer patient, moved from Vancouver to Edmonton. And he realized that there is not much research on prostate cancer happening in Edmonton. So he identified there's a need for this. And he, with his friends and acquaintances, gathered a fund of millions of dollars. I think it's $8 million initially. And he established a chair position in University of Alberta, the John and Carla Sojonki chair. And that facilitated Dr. John Lewis to be hired in University of Alberta. And Dr. John Lewis moved from East Coast of Canada to Edmonton with his talented team. And he started his research there. And he had one goal. He had multiple goals, but the focus was to improve patient outcomes and quality of life by developing new diagnostic tests. I'll stress here, new diagnostic tests and novel treatments, and move them to clinic. This is very important. As an academic researcher, we often just focus on research, publishing, research. But the mission of Dr. John Lewis group was to bring it to the people where it really matters. And that I'm very happy and very excited to say that we have achieved that. When John's team started their work in Edmonton, they were given a huge number of objectives. And among all these objectives, the group had identified 4 main objectives. Let's go through them one by one. The first one was to establish a world-class translational prostate cancer research and training program. Notice that translational word here. They wanted to translate the research in the real world, to have a clinical studies and trials, and have a streamlined ethics protocol. So I'll stop here. The ethics protocol, it often takes a long time, and there's a lot of time wastage involved. What Dr. John Lewis and his team did, they have streamlined the ethics protocol so it's efficient, not only time efficient, but it's also more effective. That's the word. And they also wanted to train highly qualified personnel. The next 2 objectives are actually quite interrelated. So they wanted to create a prostate cancer biorepository where they would collect and store patient samples, urine, serum, blood, plasma, semen, and they would also create a registry where the clinical data for those samples would be stored. And it has been created by creation of Alberta Prostate Cancer Research Initiative, APCARI. But these are the groundwork for the fourth objective, what is to develop, validate, and implement novel and effective diagnostic tests and treatments. APCARI has also established a network of clinical sites in Edmonton and Calgary. So in Edmonton, APCARI has a connection, or an effective and fruitful connection with Northern Alberta Urology Center and Cross Cancer Institute. In Calgary, the APCARI is connected with Tom Baker Cancer Center and Prostate Cancer Center, Calgary. We work very closely, and this facilitated us to work very closely with the physician and the patients. So right now, APCARI, the Alberta Prostate Cancer Research Initiative, has about 250 individuals working with them. And among all these 250 individuals, there are clinical scientists, basic scientists, trainees, administrative staff, clinical staff, and with all of them, there is a research wing, and the research part, Desmond has already talked about it in 2019, where the focus is to study mechanism of metastasis, novel diagnostics, nanotechnology for imaging and therapy. And APCARI has now supported research in all over the world using their the sample repository and sample registry. And they have provided, these numbers are a little bit outdated. There are more than 9,000 patients enrolled right now. Am I correct? About 9,000?
Over 9,000.
9,000 patients. And the sample aliquots, I'm pretty sure it's more than 300,000 now. And these aliquots have been distributed all over the world. But the translational work has been through some spin-off companies where there are, remember the fourth goal that we want, the John Lewis's team wanted to achieve, is to bring these research to the real world, to the patients, to the physicians. And there are some spin-off companies who are working on this path. And Nanostics, our company, is one of them. And we will focus on our work at Nanostics today. So Nanostics is a precision health company. We develop novel cancer and other novel diagnostic tests for cancer and other diseases. For today's talk, I will focus on only prostate cancer diagnostics because that's what we are very excited about right now, but we are working on some other projects as well. We are supported by a very, very experienced executive team. Dr. John Lewis is there. And some of the executive team members are actually founding member of APCARI, the Alberta Prostate Cancer Research Initiative. And this is our clinical and regulatory team who has been working in developing this ClarityDX Prostate test, the new novel prostate cancer diagnostic test. So Todd is our medical laboratory director. Desmond, being our chief scientific officer, is also working as the delegate for the medical laboratory director. I manage the clinical laboratory in Edmonton, also working as a senior scientist for the company. Juliana is our clinical scientist, but she is also taking care of all the projects that we are handling right now. Last but not the least, Sean, our quality manager, he is actually checking if all the work that we are performing is of highest quality or not. We will come to that. Quality is one of our main focus when we were developing this test. So just to recap, AppCarry, the Alberta Prostate Cancer Research Initiative, is supporting multiple projects right now. Nanostics is sponsored for 2 of these projects. One is for bladder cancer, and one is for the prostate cancer test that we have developed. So we are not a part of the AppCarry, but we are a sponsor of this project. This is our clinical laboratory in Edmonton. We have developed this ClarityDX Prostate test in Alberta. We closely work with Prostate Cancer Center in Calgary. You can actually see Camel and Jay in this image. And this is the state-of-the-art analyzer that we are using to analyze the biomarkers. This particular system, it's called the Cobus, is made by Roche, and it can generate data from more than 2,000 samples in a day, and within the accuracy of only 2% variation. So how does this test work? What is this test about? What are we talking about? ClarityDX Prostate test is a liquid biopsy test. What we do, we collect clinical features from the patient, the age, digital rectal exam results, whether there are previous negative biopsy data or not. But we also collect biomarker data analyzed by the Cobus system that I just showed you. Using all this data, we put through our machine learning algorithm, which is proprietary to our company. The machine learning, in turn, generates a risk score which tells the patient and the physician the probability of the disease. So it really helps it gives the clarity, that's why the clarity. It gives the clarity to the patient and the physician where they are with the disease state. Nanostics has access to a huge number of data assets. To develop ClarityDX Prostate test, we used data from Alberta, USA. Oh, this is USA, Czechia, and Canada, USA, and Czechia. We used this other data for developing other tests and for other projects. Let's talk about the validation of this test. Before I go there, I just want to remind you all that when we validate a test, we have to verify and validate each and every component. Not only the biomarker, not only the machine learning algorithm, not only the whole thing, but each and every component of this test individually. So to do that clinical study, to do that trial, we used data from patients who were eligible for our trial. So how did we decide that? So we checked the data from the male patients between 40 to 75 years old who has more than 3 nanogram per milliliter total PSA. These patients went to urological clinics and had pre-biopsy diagnostic radiological clinic. They gave informed consent to use their data, to use their sample. The biospecimens were collected. We did an intake survey. We gathered the demographic and clinical data, and the biopsy was performed. And we had all this data. We collected all this data, and we went to validate our test. So the validation, as I already mentioned, the validation of the ClarityDX prostate test was performed from data from USA. So these are the locations from where we collected samples and data. Edmonton, Calgary, Johns Hopkins, UCLA, and also it's here, that's Czechia. And this is just a snippet of all the data that we have actually used for our validation study. So from UCLA, we had almost 1,400 sample. From Prostate Cancer Center, we had 442. And these patients' data were used for training. And for validating, we had to use data from other locations, and we used data from Kipnis Urology Center, 938 patients, and this is from Czechia, almost 300 patients. What does it mean? What happened in our validation state? This is our training data from UCLA and PCC. I want to draw your attention to this last row. Notice the sensitivity and specificity. This is the prediction accuracy. And notice this number here, the accuracy of test providing low risk prediction. So what does it mean? That how well this test identifies the negative patients. So we have seen that all the prostate biopsies that have been performed in North America, almost 40% of them are unnecessary. Our test can identify a majority of those unnecessary biopsies, and the patient may not have to go for a biopsy. So that number is very important. But this is a training cohort. Now coming to the validation cohort, see the number? So it's still very accurate, and the prediction accuracy for the low risk prostate cancer is very, very high. But what does it mean for the patients or the physician? What will they see this? No. So this is a sample test report that the physician and the patient will see. You will see that here the patient will see this number. This is the risk score. But it's not only the risk score that we are showing in our report. We are also showing here where that risk score stands in the percentile scale. And these scales are calibrated according to the age group. So for this age group, I think this is, the age is 52 years. So this graph changes if the patient's age is 62 or 42. So this gives, again, coming back to that word clarity, this gives clarity to the patient and the physician. And this, when they see this report, they will be able to take a more informed decision whether a patient needs to go for a biopsy or not. This is our proposed care path. Once our test is implemented, this is how it will work. The initial screening will always involve the total PSA analysis. If the total PSA turns out to be less than 3 nanogram per milliliter, we will not perform the ClarityDX prostate test. And but if the PSA concentration is more than or equal to 3 nanogram per milliliter, we are proposing to use the ClarityDX prostate test. And initially, this test will be available in Alberta through DynaLife. And that includes repeat of total PSA that they have done, analysis of free PSA, and it will use these data as well as the clinical data in the algorithm and will generate the risk score as I just showed you. We are proposing that if there's a high risk, the person should go for a biopsy and or MRI. And if it's a low risk, they may not need to go for a biopsy. We can avoid all these unnecessary biopsies there. And they can continue, the physician can continue monitoring the patient. In this slide, what we are showing that our test, the ClarityDX Prostate, is much more effective and accurate as compared to some of the other similar tests. So 4K score is one of the tests that's quite widely used in the world. In other part of the world, I have seen that some of them are using it. But the problem is, I mean, the accuracy is often not as good as the ClarityDX Prostate. The other point is almost all of, I want to say all of them are expensive than our test. And that prevents these tests to be implemented in our healthcare system. Our test is significantly cheaper as compared to these ones. Talking about cost, we have collaborated with the Institute of Health Economics, and they have performed a health economics study on Albertan patients, the Canadian cohort, and they have identified that if ClarityDX Prostate test is implemented, then out of 1,000 patients, 146 biopsies will be reduced, and that will help the government to save $280 per patient. And when you think about the population that we are looking at, that means millions of dollars. This is very important because we want to implement this test right now. So what's our commercialization strategy here? We are starting to sell this test as a lab-developed test in Canada. We are actually going through a CPSA accreditation, College of Physician and Surgeon of Alberta. Actually, we are going to have an audit end of this month. We will start with a direct sell, hopefully within 6 weeks. The sale will be through DynaLife, and eventually will be through other providers. And we are going for, we are trying for provincial reimbursement at this point. We will also sell the test as a lab-developed test in USA. We are actually working with a number of groups in down south to have this test available for direct sale. And eventually, we are going for FDA approval licensing to LabCorp, Sonic, and we are also talking with Roche. I mean, we are using the system from Roche. Abbott is another big company who are developing analyzer, and we can actually integrate our test with their system directly. We are that's a work in progress, but right now we are very excited to say that this test will be available for patients in Alberta in a matter of 6 weeks, or hardly 2 months. Let's talk about the quality. I mentioned about quality initially. So now a talk on quality itself probably take 2 hours, but I'll try to summarize in just 2 slides. During the pandemic, what we all have seen that there is a huge mistrust among people for big pharma companies, because they did not understand what these people are doing, how good these vaccines are, how good these tests are. We asked the same question ourselves, how good our test is. And sure enough, there can be multiple points where a test, a treatment, can go wrong. In this slide, I'll just point out only a few things. Let's say we are performing the ClarityDX Prostate test in our lab, and we receive samples, but we receive the samples which are hemolyzed. And it's so much hemolyzed that we cannot even use it. If we cannot identify it, and if we still run it, we will get a result, yes, but the result will not be accurate. So that can lead to a problem. There could be short draws. So if for this particular test we need a minimum volume of 300 microliter of sample. It's a tiny volume, 300 microliter. But even sometimes we have seen that the samples are not up to 300 microliter. The system will still generate a result, but the result will not be accurate. The operator who is running the system, who is performing the algorithm, they may not be trained. The environment, the temperature of the lab, I mean, we have worked within the DynaLife, and we have seen that sometimes, particularly during the winter, in certain part of the lab, the temperature may go down to even 15 degrees. And these things may influence the test. The reagent, we purchase all our reagents from Roche for the analyzer that we are using. But they ship these reagents from Montreal. These reagents are not supposed to be frozen. Now think about December in Edmonton. We received this reagents, we don't know, and maybe it was delivered in the dead in the night, and in the morning I go there, I say, oh, that's nice, the reagents are not frozen. But I don't know whether they were frozen when they were being shipped. That can generate a problem. The analyzer can fail. So how do we mitigate all these problems? And we mitigate all these problems through quality. For sample integrity, we have a systematic checks established in our lab. We check each and every sample. We have a list of characteristics that we compare before we even use that sample. Operator, we train each and every operator. I got trained, Desmond got trained. And not only training, we check the competency periodically. We check the competency after training, but we revisit the competency after 6 months. Atmosphere, I talked about temperature variation. We monitor temperature, humidity, noise, vibration, dust. Reagent integrity, we have extensive, that itself can be a one talk, how we check our reagents. We receive each shipments, and we have established extensive test that we perform on each and every reagent. We perform external quality assurance using samples from College of American Pathologists. For analyzer, we calibrate the analyzer every week. We check the analyzer using the external, the third-party QC material every day, before and after running the samples. And all these things, all these procedures are documented. And we have to make them documented because we are going for an accreditation process. And if we are not documenting all these things, then we will not get the accreditation, will not be able to sell the product to the patients. This part is complete. We are ready for audit. We are ready to sell this product. Just before I finish, this is a short infographic for our key milestone. This is where we are right now. We have received a CE mark for a different version of the ClarityDX Prostate test in Europe. We are right now working towards the accreditation process with CPSA. It's not very clear here, but we are closely working with DynaLife for this test to be available. We are working with other groups like Protean in USA. We are also working towards FDA approval, enrichment. We are working on this part, the enrichment of external validation. We are hoping to have our FDA approval sometime in 2014. I don't know if it's possible before that, but hopefully 2024, not 2014. Yeah, 2024. And at this point, we will also try to integrate our test with companies like Roche and Abbott. I already mentioned Siemens also has an analyzer, and that can also be integrated with ClarityDX Prostate. And from there, our long-term goal is obviously to have it reimbursement and global sales sometime in 2026. There are lots of things I can talk about this test, but I'll stop here, and I'll open this floor for any question that you may have. I'm here, Desmond is here. Maybe we can have an informal chat about this. Thank you very much. Yes.
That's good. So I guess it's a question. Let's see if I can phrase this correctly. You're talking about the patient. I'm an advanced prostate cancer patient myself, diagnosed 15 years ago, which obviously is a period of time. But at the time of diagnosis, my family doctor didn't believe in PSA, and there's many doctors that don't believe in it today, I understand. My diagnosis was the result of a kidney stone, and so it was a diagnosis resulted from the kidney stone treatment, not from actually anything to do with PSA or the digital examiner. So you're selling this program, and I understand your DynaLife is going to administer it. But as an individual, at the time, I didn't know anything about prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know what tests to ask for, what the process was to go through. Simply diagnosed, sent to the rapid access program.
Yep.
So really, your client is the urologist or the family doctor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me. It's them that understand the test and its possibilities, and convincing them that this is a better alternative than going through the prostate or the rapid access program, ending up with biopsy. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes. So what we are, what we are doing right now, we are working very closely with rapid action clinics. But we are, if I understand your question correctly, you are asking whether we should be talking to you or whether we should be talking to...
Partially, it's that, or what I hadn't heard is how you're going to educate the dummies like me.
That's what,
to the system that know nothing about what should be done.
So that's,
and you have to make a decision within a couple of weeks, by the way, usually when all of this transpires.
So that's why we come to people like you. That's why we come here. That's why we talk to people. That's why we are talking to physicians. We are talking to urologists. We are talking to family physicians. We are actively talking to other support groups like Right for Dads. We are educating people through direct conversation. We are educating through our presentations, the public presentations. That's what we are trying to achieve. But that's why we also come to you guys to discuss what we have achieved. But ultimately, yes, you're right. Ultimately, this test has to be recommended through a doctor, through urologist and family physician. And we are working very closely with them.
So I'll give you the executive spin on that one. Sorry.
No, but
You
please.
answered it correctly. So in this previous decade, what we've done is we've focused all of our energies and financial resources towards the development of the test. That's where our energies had to be. At this point, we've realized we've achieved the product. We're ready to launch. We recognize, yes, we have to educate urologists because ultimately they're going to make the decision. But more to the point, we have to educate GPs because you brought up a valid point. Not every physician believes in the PSA test. The PSA test in and of itself is a great test. It just doesn't correlate very well with the diagnosis of cancer. So what our test does is it builds upon your PSA, provides additional biomarkers, and gives you more clarity as to what those two biomarkers mean in relation to other clinical features, such as your age and other tests associated with your chance of prostate cancer. At this point now, we can move the direction of some of our finances and actually start an education program. And that's part of the marketing of bringing this test out. Because up until this point, there's no point in actually marketing it if we're not sure of the test. We're sure of this test. We're absolutely 100% sure of this test. We built it here in Alberta. We validated it in Canada, the USA, and Europe. It works. Now it's getting the word out. So we're working with both provincial groups and international groups, like donors, like the Motorcycle Ride for Day. We're part of their funding goes to education and awareness, and the other half of their funding goes towards research. So working with groups like that helps spread the word out. But like Argo said, and I'll disagree with you a little bit. You're our target. We're here to help you. And that's been our mission from day one, is to actually impact patients. How do we do that? Well, part of it is actually coming here and saying, what are we missing? What do we miss? So we brought up key points. Others have brought this up and we're aware of it, but we're working on them. Now it's actually raising those funds to do that education. And it's hard. I mean, we're dealing with urological associations and healthcare systems that are advocating to not do PSA. But if you don't do PSA, how do we actually start screening for people with prostate cancer? Of course, right? So it is a problem. So we're trying to make that happen. But you do bring up a very, very fundamental point. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry.
No, thank you.
Other questions? Frank, while you said that, I don't show myself here. I think we're the answer to your question, and that is we've got to be talking to everybody, and particularly young men and their families, about our group and about PSA testing and DRE testing, you know. And what I was going to look for is we've got a 3x5, little cards like these, and maybe I'll just have you take one and pass them back. Why don't we, you've seen these. Why don't we have these available whenever we're in a group where we've got an audience that can, is receptive to hearing about prostate cancer. and give them one of these. You know, in terms of, what shall we say, increasing the, you know, the knowledge about PSA testing and so on.
Well, and that would be great, and if we could educate more, you know, I was 52 when I got diagnosed, and
Yeah,
my doctor just didn't believe in it. And so
yeah,
if we could educate younger people and catch it sooner,
yeah,
it would be fantastic. And the other thing is whether we can educate them on this particular test so they can go in and say,
Yes.
hey, I read in the paper, or I saw an article that talked about this test, you know, should I have it done,
Mhm.
and could we get it done, type of thing. Assuming that the doctors are willing to do that.
yeah.
That's the only way to get the message out.
I think, you know, you said 2006 or when?
2008.
8, yeah, okay. I'm hoping that the information is better now with the general practitioners in primary healthcare. You know, that they're more believing, shall we say, of PSA testing and early diagnosis. I remember I was with the man van, with the Prostate Cancer Center man van doing PSA testing at Shaw GMC, and I was standing there. It was Stampede Week, and they were doing the breakfast, and fellow standing next to me, he said, "What's all this about?" And I said, "Well, we're doing free PSA tests for men between the ages of 40 and 80. And he says, "No, I don't believe in that." And I said, "No." I said, "Tell me." And he says, "Well, I'm a physician from Kelowna, and here on holidays, and I said, "So you don't believe in PSA testing?" I said, "So tell me what the alternative is." And he couldn't answer.
Wow.
You know, and then I don't know what you do there. You know, I don't know what you do.
Well, the only answer to that is that more patients like me have to be educated and demand
Yes.
what has happened.
Yeah.
Because these individuals stand in the way
Yeah.
of us getting proper treatment, or early treatment, I
Yeah.
should say. And that's kind of good of the problem. The other thing I would bring up is, you've got, you know, some are doing biopsy, but then some are suggesting MRI. So some are suggesting the PSMA scan. So I don't know how this fits with.
So I can
Yeah.
answer that. So since we started developing on this test, the standard of care has changed a little bit. So when we started, MRI was not available. It was going through clinical testing. So the reality now is PSA testing, that's your screening test. That gets you flagged, right? Whether or not physicians believe it or not, it is the test that we have to actually give you, hey, you know what, we need to double check this guy. He may or may not have prostate cancer. It won't happen in every case. PSA doesn't correlate greatly with prostate cancer. MRI has come along and has provided us with a really great way to image. But yes, it's great, but we're also adding in another costly test. MRI is not cheap. It's on the order between $800 and $900. There's an additional wait times. And as we bring that more into the standard of care for everybody, those are going to get longer, right? We don't want MRI to be a screen test. We want to make sure that the right patient gets selected to go to an MRI. And then the MRI can then help direct the quality of the biopsy. And that's the way we make sure that the right patient gets the precision medicine. So ClarityDX Prostate can help streamline those patients and build upon the PSA test. And in our publication, we show that ClarityDX Prostate is as good as, if not better, than MRI at that screening selection.
And I assume the PSMA would even be more expensive.
Yes.
It used to be the choline, whatever it was, 17.
So PSMA loop is coming online.
Yes.
It's not necessarily available everywhere yet. It's still in clinical testing or clinical trials, depending on the jurisdiction. So it may be available in British Columbia, but to be fair, I don't know the jurisdictions. For example, it may be available in British Columbia, but it may not be available in Alberta. Or it may be available in Quebec, but not in Ontario. It depends on where those clinical studies are being executed. So that's frustrating in and of itself. But again, That's another way to actually go more precise. So screen, you build towards identifying who needs the treatment, and then you identify where the treatment needs to be, and then very precisely with the imaging, pinpoint, okay, this is where exactly you need to treat. So you're making it, you're getting down to that needle very, very precisely.
Well, and anyone who's ever had a biopsy understands the pain and discomfort that it entails and the potential side effects.
So to that point, what we're doing now, the next phase of ClarityDX Prostate is active surveillance.
Right.
Because of course, if you go in and you get your biopsy and it's negative, what do? You want active surveillance, which could be MRI 1 year, biopsy the next.
Right.
So the idea of having 6 or 8 biopsies over the course of my lifetime, does not thrill me.
No.
So we need better ways to actually identify those individuals that need to go for biopsy. And that was the task that we recognized when we started this. And I think ClarityDX Prostate is that tool to help us identify those men. With the test that we have now, we can reduce 35% of unnecessary biopsies, which doesn't sound like a big number, but if you're that guy in that 35%, it's a huge number, right? And I mean, we're getting there.
Yes.
Any other questions for Argo or Desmond?
How do you get that test if you're a lay person?
How do you get what test?
Well, how do you
The Clarity?
Yeah,
Yeah, it will be, it will have to be prescribed by the physician. And,
to get that test, you prescribe what?
It's prescribed, yes.
sorry?
The test is prescribed?
Yes. Well, it's still not available in the market because we are right now going through the accreditation process. The accreditation process will finish in, probably in 6 weeks. Our audit is on 30th of August. So by the end of
So
September.
physicians do not know about this.
So
Physician, we are talking with physicians always, and we are in active conversation with physicians. Just like we are talking with you people, we are talking with physicians. We are closely working with people from PCC and in Edmonton, and they know we are trying to educate the physicians as well. But once this test is available, a patient can also go to the physician and tell them, I have heard about this test. This is the website. Have a look. Can I have this test? And that's our goal as well.
What does that test cost?
So I'll come back to the first question first.
Okay.
So the development of this test started a decade ago with physicians at PCC and the Northern Alberta Urology Clinic, which is now the KM Clinic. Physicians in both parts of the province have been part of the development. Those are the guys that actually recruited our patients. So the urologists are educated. We have an annual meeting every year where we actually update our research. And you've been to several of these meetings. So the urologists in the province have watched the evolution. We're just presenting this paper now internationally, which summarizes all of this data. Eric Hyman, the chief physician at PCC, he's the lead author. Eric is our voice. He's on our board. He's our chief medical officer. He's that voice. So the urologists understand. We're getting out to the rest of the Canadian urologists. So part of our board is urologists in Quebec, Ontario. We have some in BC and all through the US. So we're getting to urologists. Getting to the GPs, that's a harder question. Because as you mentioned, there's a bit of education that needs to happen. So we're doing that. Now to come to your question, so the cost of the tests. So I'll highlight this way. The other tests that Argo brought up are anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000. The Canadian Urology Association recognizes that some of those tests actually have benefits and they can help you make a better decision. But because of the cost, they do not actually recommend that they do them in this country. You can get them down in the US, but you're going to pay $1,000 to $4,000. Our test has got to be economically priced to fit within the Canadian healthcare system. So we're negotiating the number with AHS, but I'll say it this way. It is the cost of taking your spouse out to a nice meal, no less, no more. So it will be available at a reasonable price for every man in the province.
When was that?
It'll be available at a reasonable price.
When was that, sorry?
So, because we're going through the accreditation, we are hoping to have a major launch in the early fall. So that we're gonna have a huge media blitz to actually identify it, and we'll have stakeholders from both from the government and all of the health agencies here in the province. So look for us in the fall. We'll definitely send out a note to you guys. I mean, we presented here. You guys have been a part of this journey. I mean, I would imagine if you guys have gone to PCC, you've probably been consented for some of our programs. We've probably analyzed your blood. Good chance. You're part of it, so we're going to make sure that you guys are aware of it.
That's a biorepository.
That's the biorepository. So we've had app carrier 1, 3, and 5. And those samples, I mean, we've used them for a decade to actually help develop this test. So this test was designed in Alberta, made in Alberta, verified and validated with the blood of Alberta men. So yeah, we're definitely going to let you guys know when we're going to launch it.
I said it.
This is a question from.
I said it before. I mean, the important thing I think is
So it's
not for
I
us.
see we have a question online, but I don't know how we can.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yes, I have a question for the doctors. First, I want to thank you for the interesting presentation. During the development of your research into the test, did you use data from Alberta's Tomorrow project, which has over 55,000 participants for about nearly 20 years, I suppose? Did you use any of their data, or were you allowed to develop your test?
So
it's
that's
interesting that project.
Very timely question. So for this particular test, no, we did not. Very early in the days, I did use samples from the Tomorrow project to act as negative controls. So the Tomorrow project started off with healthy individuals, and it followed those individuals on a longitudinal basis to see when they developed any type of disease index. But we had an intern this summer, 2 interns that actually worked on using data from not only the Alberta Tomorrow project, the Tomorrow project, but so do you guys know what the Tomorrow project actually is? So a number of years ago, the Tomorrow project came together, and anyone can challenge me on this. I may get a mistaken, but they provided questionnaires about the quality of life, your health index, so age, pretty much any number of factors. It could be 100 questions, 200 questions, and they took some samples. And then they followed those individuals for a number of years. So you actually got a questionnaire-based health index, if I can qualify it and summarize it that way. The Atlantic provinces did the same. Ontario and BC had similar projects, different names. So now all of that data has actually been collated together in what's called CanPath. So there's data from, I think, 170,000 Canadians, which is very unique because it's longitudinal data going from healthy individuals to potentially diseased individuals. So what that allows us to do is actually look at, I can't remember the number, but it was in the thousands of potential nodes of information that you could pull from. So what our interns did this summer was they actually built a machine learning algorithm to take all of that data available from the general public and make a repository and a risk assessment for the general public. So what we're doing is we're in the very early stages of saying, if you want to know your risk for emphysema, for example, I think that was one of the major diseases. Well, you could go in and answer a series of questions, probably 25 or 30, and based upon the data from 170,000 plus individuals in Canada, what's your risk of getting emphysema? in the next 5 years. So we have that for about over 20 different diseases. Cancer we're working on, but the number of cancer patients, of course, is low for all the subtypes. We're working on enriching that. But yes, so we are doing that, not for the development of this test, but that's something that we'd like to make available. I can't give you a time frame because it's very early days. We just got the data, I think in March, we got final access to the data, but we were able to get a working prototype and the first pass algorithms to generate predictive scores that were 80% and better accuracy for certain diseases. So our technology team is working on that. So hopefully that'll be available in the next, I don't want to put a time limit on, but coming.
Active surveillance as well.
And active surveillance as well, yes. So all those are coming in. So great, very timely question.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. That's interesting because I've been contributing my data to Tomorrow Project, I think since about maybe 2000 or 2003 or something like that. And, you know, they are collecting, as you say, data related to lifestyle, what you eat, how much you exercise, all those things put together. And then, of course, they are seeing those statistics as to, you know, what likely cancers or other problems they might run into in the future. But thank you for your answer. That's very interesting. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It may not be talked about, but the scientists are crunching, we're crunching the data. And it's not just crunching the data and giving the stats, we're actually making an application that you can go to a website and say, you know what, I'm interested to know if I'm going to get Crohn's colitis or emphysema or any number of disease types. Answer 25 to 50 questions. And it's like, okay, here's actually a reasonable risk assessment of whether or not you should really think about getting further testing.
Thanks very much again. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? If not, I want to thank Argo and Desmond for very interesting, and we look forward certainly to hearing more positive news. And thank you very much.